Hey guys, this is Zero here with some not so fun news, and I wasn't gonna make this video because everybody's made a video, but I wanted to give my thoughts because I never really given my thoughts on this topic. So, if you read the title of the video, this is my thoughts, reaction, whatever to Satoru Iwata's passing. He passed away on July 11th due to complications with the cancer that he had. If some of you remember in E3 2014, he was not there because he had to step out for medical reasons. And it looked like everything was going to be fine. As he was at this E3 just not even a month ago, and everything seemed to be fine. But it looks like his infection came back and took a turn for the worse, and he unfortunately passed away. I don't want to spend this entire video talking about like mourning over his loss. What I want to do with this video is talk about some interesting things I found out about Satoru Iwata. Like, for instance, like, he was a programmer for HAL way before he became the president of Nintendo. And there's some accomplishments that have to be talked about that he's done in the gaming industry that I think are important, because a lot of people just see him as the guy who looks at bananas. And he's so much more than that. Though you can tell that he had that fun attitude and spirit when they redid that with the puppets this year at E3. So I'm just going to go over a couple things. First off, he's programmed some of the best Nintendo games out there. He reprogrammed pretty much from scratch Earthbound, which that's insane. Like, when Hal was helping Ape with getting Earthbound completed, he was one of the primary programmers for that, and I didn't know that. And in fact, I didn't even know he was a programmer. I had heard he created Balloon Fight, so I assumed he was. But so that's, most people credit him for being the creator of Balloon Fight and being one of the main programmers on Earthbound. So one of the main creators behind Earthbound. But he has a lot of stuff on his belt. One that I thought was most interesting is without documentation, he pretty much programmed from scratch the entire battle system part of the engine for the Pokemon Stadium games. Now, he had Game Freak, I guess, didn't have a ton of like experienced programmers, and they couldn't figure out how to get the battle system from the Game Boy games to work on the N64. So, without documentation, without anybody telling him how the system works, he took one look at the battle system from Red and Blue, or in the case of Japan, Red and Green, and decided and created essentially the battle system portion of the engine for Pokemon Stadium, which is unreal. I've dabbled in programming. I went to college for computer engineering and web design, and I know two handfuls full of programming languages. So let me just say that working on somebody else's program without documentation is tough. Now, these days, we're lucky because you can add comments into programs. Like, you can add lines of comments that just are there to say, this section is to use this part of the engine, or this section controls this. They probably didn't have that advantage when they were programming these games, or they didn't think about it. So it's interesting that he was able to accomplish something, a feat that great. Now, another big feat, which gets me to one of my favorite generation of Pokemon, Gold and Silver, is that They wanted to include Kanto into the Gold and Silver series of games, but they were running out of space to put it in there. So Satoru Iwata steps in for Game Freak again and does the compression code to make, essentially make, compress the gameplay they already had set up, like all the stuff they already had set up, so they could fit the Kanto sections onto the game. And being able to go back to Kanto is a big part of Gold and Silver, and that's the reason why it's my favorite generation of Pokemon games, because you getting to go back to the world you were at before and seeing what it was like 3 years later is a huge feature. And I think it's amazing that he did it. Like, there's a ton of gaming accomplishments. I found a list of all the games he programmed on, Satoru Iwata programmed on, and there's one interesting one that I didn't realize. This is Arcana, or Arcana, for the Super Nintendo. It's one of my favorite Super Nintendo games of all time. I haven't talked much about it because I actually want to review this game at some point. The only reason I haven't yet is because it's an RPG and I've never completed it. I want to complete this before I talk about it because there's a lot to say about it, and this game is highly underrated. But this game is fantastic. If you like dungeon crawlers, this is a really fun one. It's kind of hard, and it's old school, so it's got that old school, toughness about it. But it's really fun, and I recommend it to anybody who hasn't had a chance to play it. And this game is special to me because this is actually my grandmother's copy. I don't know if I've talked about this on a vlog like this before, but my grandmother had a Super Nintendo, and when we used to go to my grandmother's place, when it was a rainy day or there was nothing to do outside, we'd play Super Nintendo. Me, my brother, and my cousins. And one of the games that she had, I already did a review on, Ultimate Fighter, and that was a special game for me because it was a game that I had a lot of fond memories of, and it was also one of those games that I feel I'm one of the few positive reviews for that game, since a lot of people shit all over that game. And Arcana is another one of those ones that my grandma just happened to have that I'd never heard of before, and I've never seen this game out in the wild. I think I've seen it once out in the wild, and honestly, it's one of my favorite RPGs of all time. It's got a unique feel, and it's a dungeon crawler. This was the first dungeon crawler I ever played. That introduced me to the genre, and I played other games since. But it's a really, really fun game, really underrated game, and Satoru Iwata is the primary programmer for this. This is one of his games, and I feel like I hate to say this, but I feel like I needed a motivation to complete this game because now I really want to finish it to see the end of it. And I hate to say that, Satoru Iwata's passing is my motivation for completing it, but honestly, I've always wanted to see this game to the end. My brother finally, after years, last year completed this game, and said it said the entire game was awesome, and I wanted to play it myself. And when I told him the news of Iwata's passing, he says, "Well, now you have to beat Arcana. It's because you have to experience this game, and I want to. So, I'm going to play through this and go through this as much as I can. I also want to complete Earthbound at some point. But just like this, Earthbound's going to be a huge undertaking, so I'm going to start with Arcana, and then make my way to Earthbound, now that I have it for Wii U. And, I want to end this video off with a quote from Satoru Iwata, a quote that I think really, displays who he is. And it's, "On my business card, I am a corporate president. In my mind, I am a game developer. But in my heart, I am a gamer." And that really solidifies what Satoru Iwata was all about. The reason Nintendo was so successful with the Wii and DS and 3DS and everything that he was in charge of while he was the head of Nintendo is because he had this philosophy, and this is a philosophy that a lot of people at Nintendo have, that games should be fun. You should have fun playing games. You should have fun playing games with other people. And there's a quote from, I forget the programmer's name, but from Argonaut Games, who made Star Fox, when they were working on Star Fox. He said that no idea should go into a game, even if it's a good one. And that means don't put, like, when you're designing a game, it's more important how fun the game is to play than how cool it is. Because if you look at any of the games from the Genesis or Super Nintendo or whatever from the 90s, you can tell the ones that were trying to go for the coolness factor, and only a handful of them are actually good games. So, like, things that come to my mind are like Kid Chameleon. Decent game, but it's mostly going for its 90s 90s style of cool, and a lot of those games do that. You don't really remember the games that tried to go for the cool edge. You remember the ones that were fun. The only real game that, the main game that comes to mind right now to think that was able to do cool and fun at the same time is Sonic the Hedgehog, specifically the second game, but that was like a case of lightning striking, so... but there's a ton of like that. Like Mario, I wouldn't consider Mario a cool character, so I would consider his games fun. So that's just an example. Nintendo's philosophy that fun comes first. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention. Also, a big thing for those fans of Super Smash Bros. Melee, one of the main debuggers on Melee was Satoru Iwata. So there you go. So... and I heard, I don't know how true this is, but I heard that even though he was the president of Nintendo, he would still, whenever the development divisions were in a crunch, he would sometimes get in there and help do the debugging on the games, which that's amazing. When the president of the company is actively, like, part of the game making space, especially since at that point he wasn't really programming games anymore. So anyways, I've dragged this out longer than I wanted to. Satoru Iwata passed away July 11th, 2015 at the age of 55. A little too soon for, I think a lot of people would agree. And he was a juggernaut of game programming. His legacy in the gaming industry won't be forgotten anytime soon. And not just as a programmer, but as like a leader of Nintendo, producer, all his roles. He's a corporate president. He's a game developer, and he's a gamer. And I hope he rests in peace. Thanks for watching my vlog, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Hopefully it's not depressing like this one is.